Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome back as we are happy to introduce our special guest, disco and house icon Christine Wiltshire. And she's joining us today, and we discuss a little bit how career and why she's still so relevant in today's music, and why she should absolutely get more credit than she's getting at the moment for all her work she's been doing. And we'll discuss this as today. So thanks, Christine, for joining.
Thank you, Nadine, for having me.
To make people aware of what kind of projects you were working in, you were working at projects like Musique, you were working on projects like Poussey, you were working with the great Patrick Adams, who also did Keres, which was also a very successful project. You were working on Musique too. You were working on Luther. And you were also, and this is, I think, the second version which came out in total three. I prefer the first one from Freak. This is the class action version from Weekend. And see, you are even on the cover, which is very rare when it comes to music you did.
Yes.
So, Christine, tell us, how did you get into the music business?
Oh, man, I always that was always who I wanted what I wanted to do. Um, I how does one get into the music business? You go and you hang out and you start to meet people. You try to meet people. You know, you go out at night and you look for different venues. You ask, can you sit in? You find musicians that play, and you go to hear them play, and you form friendships, and things like that. I mean, that's how you get started. I mean, that's how I got started. I walked up and down Seventh Avenue and went in record companies with a reel to reel tape for them to listen to. you know what did I know? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just
sure.
thought, well, I got this tape. I know somebody's going to listen, because, of course, we thought it was great. So,
Good. So your
you know,
first footsteps were, I think, in 1973 with something different, where you were joined also with a legendary lady, Jocelyn Brown, and the two of you worked on a project with Yoko Ono. Maybe you can tell us a
yes,
little bit about that.
we did. In fact, we actually worked on a project with John Lennon first.
Wow.
And Yoko, when she heard us, she says, "I want them for my album." So that's how we got to do her album. We used to be an engineer up in Record Plant. I think it's called Record Plant. My memory, who would let us put tapes together, so we would have something to show. His name was Jimmy, and it's from being with him that somehow John found us through this engineer, which is how we got to do his album. And that same tape that I took around to Buddha is how we got our gig with Zulema. It's how we started working for her. And that's when I met Patrick in the elevator. I met a lot of people in elevators. But I met James Brown in the same elevator. But that's how I met Patrick in the elevator. And, we started to talk. And that's something else. But you're asking me about Yoko Ono. Jocelyn and I, and we had a girlfriend named Angel, and later another girl named Kathy Moe. We have been friends. Jocelyn and I have been friends since we're about 11, 12 years old. Her aunt lived on my block, and when she would come to visit, she and I would play out in the back and that kind of thing. And we put this little group together. We used to rehearse in my mother's basement because I had a piano. And we used to go down there and sing. And we put this group together called Something Different. And we were doing gigs here around town, little things, upstate New York. In fact, the band that was our band was the band that would also become the band for Discotheques and the Sexualettes, and then in the 80s become the group Clear, on Atlantic Records. So we all come from like, oh yeah, they were the band for the Choice Four. I mean, we all come from the same kind of the same egg here, you know, and that's what happens.
Awesome. You mentioned Patrick Adams. You worked very closely with Patrick Adams. I think you were involved in over 300 songs doing with Patrick. Maybe you can tell us, you said you met in the elevator. Maybe you can tell us a little bit how that relationship started.
I met him, like I said, I met him on the elevator, and he gave me his address and stuff, and you know, told me where he was, and I went by his office, and he played all this kind of stuff for me that he was doing. He, you know, he had a piano and he played, and you could tell he could write. And I told him, you know, he says, well, listen, why don't you come to one of the sessions and da da da, and I did. And I said, you know, look, this is what I want to do. I've got this group and blah, blah, blah. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If things go the way I want to, you can be the person who contracts all my singers. And that's how I started working for him and with him. That's back in the days when there was like real no money. There was no record company paying us, you know, or we didn't belong to the union yet, or any of those just catch can. Whoever comes in, yeah, come on, we need a singer. Yeah, come on, sing with us. But that's how I met Donna McGee, and that's how I met Leroy Burgess, and that's how I met what's her name? Venus Dotson. We're all through that stuff. Patrick just attracted all these people. You know what I mean? And that's how we all met. Patrick was the nucleus that brought us all together. You know, and I got to do really other things with Leroy. He wrote a weekend for me. I still work with him when he comes to Europe, and I'm in the process of. I've just heard he has sent me a new song, and boy, I am loving it. So I'm waiting for the track to be finished, and then I'm going to have something new for you.
Wow, that's great. That's great news. Awesome. So Patrick got famous because he was able to produce music in a very short period of time in a very cost-effective way. So there was less studio time to be paid, less musicians to be paid.
Well,
and it become hits.
Now I won't say that. In the beginning, it may have started out like that, but somewhere down the line, a lot of things went over budget too. Okay, but back in those days, in those 70s, when you know, when there was no big record company knocking on the door, Patrick would go in and he would put a drum track down, and then he'd sit down and do a bass track, and then he'd do a guitar track, and then he played everything himself. He built the track himself. You know what I mean? And the only thing he couldn't do back in those days was strings and horns. You know, you had to bring somebody in. Even people like Jeff Beck came in and did some work with him. And I'm talking way back when, you know, Cloud One and Bumblebee Unlimited and things like that. And then, you know, slowly, plus he did fabulous stuff at 19 for Black Ivory. Okay. And he was only 19 years old when he did that. He has such a rich history. And of course, along the way, the momentum picked up, and then Prelude stepped in and said, hey, you know, do such and such a thing. Well, once he got that Musique album, it's like everybody and their grandmother was calling the house for him.
Wow. Yeah, for those, this is Black Ivory's Feel It, where Patrick, I showed you, where Patrick was doing many things on. He was produced by Boris, Bascom, Patterson, and Adams, strings and horns arranged by Pat Adams. So he did many things for Black Ivory, and today it's an iconic group. It's an iconic group, what he did.
Yes.
So you mentioned Musique. Musique became huge. And what I think was absolutely interesting was what I do have here is, and I show it to you, is I have the German cover, which is different from the, I show it to you, which is different from the US cover. And I tell you why. On the US cover, you have 3 white ladies dancing.
You sure do.
And you kind of get the impression that these are also the singers, but they are not. And
no.
So, and that's what I think is so critical and so overlooked by the record companies, because you need the soul for the music. You need faces to the music, and putting people on the cover which are not belonging there or didn't do anything. It's just.
Well, this happened a lot. Look, this happened a lot first of all, when we did the Musique album, they were looking at it from the perspective of a studio album. They weren't looking at it from the perspective of putting a group or supporting a group. Okay? That only came about because it did so well. I mean, even if they had put like a robot type picture, okay, but to put 3 white girls on the cover was just devastating. Period.
Because there was no white woman involved in the project, correct?
No, there were no white women involved. And Pouze was the same thing. They put 2 girls with whistles, models, and there were no white girls singing on that record either. Then you had this is something that went on, and it wasn't even always about color. I mean, it was and it wasn't, because in some instances they wanted your sound, but they didn't want your look. Okay? And I can tell you, I just watched an interview that Jocelyn had done about 12 years ago, where, that song, I Got the Power.
Yeah, that's her.
That's her.
That's her.
And and they just took that piece and put a song around it and put all these, slim, pretty women, cute little dancers, and no credit, nothing. Okay, and this happens all the time. I just found something on Facebook. It's one of the music groups that I belong to, and this song, they had this song, and they had the nerve to call it "I Can't Take the Heartbreak." Okay, so the person who posted it, he wrote, "This sounds like Christine Wiltshire." So I played the song. I played the thing, and all you hear is, "I can't take the heartbreak. I can't take the heartbreak." That's the whole song. I mean, there's no.
That's you. That's you.
They just took my voice.
Wow.
Took that line, and made, put a track underneath it, and had the nerve to put it out, call it Heartbreak.
Wow. Yeah, I know many cases from Jocelyn Brown. Caught Up in a One-Night Love Affair was a huge hit in the late 70s. And they put a model also on the cover. In her life, she wasn't on the cover. So sometimes I think you guys weren't even mentioned in the credits.
Well, again, that, that's also Prelude. Okay. And there was another guy that we did. Oh, what's his name? Jocelyn and I did backgrounds, and my web host just dug up some of these things and found that I was on that I wasn't credited for. And, but we did background work for Prelude, and they didn't put our names on the albums, but you can hear our voices if you know us. Okay. That's what went on back then. Okay. That's exactly what they weren't developing. They weren't developing Black artists, period. At least more of the smaller independent labels, but that's what it was. And what added to it is then when you had, I mean, I will say this, don't care what anybody thinks. There was a guy named Todd Terry. Now, I've never met him. I have never met this man. He's never so much has made a Facebook friend or said, how you doing? Or blah, blah, blah. But he lifted my voice, the entire track of my voice from Class Action, and made this other version of it with different chords. I couldn't stand the record, but guess what? I had to go out there and sing it because that's the version that that particular club wanted when they asked to hire me, when they called the booking agent. We want the girl who sings this. But I had to stand up there and sing this. And mind you, I never got 5 cents for it.
Wow.
He never asked my permission. He never said, well, what do you think if we do? And the only reason I say this is because so many Black artists got ripped off back then. And here you are, a Black producer with the little fingers up, okay, who is going to do this to a fellow artist. So, yeah, I really don't have anything. I have nothing nice to say about him. But, yes, this happened all the time. And we had to start, fighting back. I mean, myself, Jocelyn, others, going through whatever you had to do to legal process to see that you get your money. Because you have no right. You have no right to just rip off what we do and turn it into something else. And you want to blame it on creativity. I mean, all this music that I can't even listen to the radio today. It's so bad. I can't take it. I really can't, because all the songs sound the same. They all have that same, thing going on, and all the singers are singing through their nose, everybody's singing through their nose, and the only difference is the video. Who's more naked than the other one? That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only difference. How much more naked are you than the video that came on before you?
Yeah.
But as far as creativity goes, it's not happening. It's not there. Not what I see on these little music programs. But it's coming back because people are, there's some real folks out there that are putting real music together. I've had DJs saying, because all of a sudden all DJs are a producer, and it's the fingers again. And they feel it because you push a button and you get this sound, but you didn't even create that sound. You just pushed, well, let's try this sound. Okay, let's try this. So you mixed some stuff together, but you created nothing. You're using, maybe it's wrong for me to say it like that, but you're still using stuff that somebody else, beats that somebody else thought of, somebody else felt, somebody else created. There's not one original thing that you put into it except that the order that you play it in. That's it. Now, you want to hear creativity? You go back and you listen to Mozart. Yeah. Or you go back and you listen to Schubert or Brahms or Beethoven or Tchaikovsky or Rimsky-Korsakov. That's creativity. So I'm a little flustered and frustrated with what I'm hearing on the radio because, boy, these kids have no idea what good. I heard something yesterday. I was in a cab, and the guy was so bad. I asked the cab driver, could you please change the station? I can listen to anybody sing anything as long as you're singing the song. But it was like, the whole song was one note. I was like, oh, God, please. I told him, could you please change the station? I can't do it. My ears just cry when it hears stuff like that. I've worked with too many really talented people, really creative people who know the value of good music and how to do it, to have to spend my time listening to somebody who's, I don't know, just kind of surfing through it, you know what I mean? And thinking because you say a certain subject matter, that's another problem, that it's going to give you a hit record. I mean, there are some songs that should have never been made, really. And when you asked me earlier about the possibility of, disco dying and blah, 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 okay, if that really had happened, I can guarantee you songs like Disco Duck, they they attributed to it.
Yes, they absolutely did. I tell you that. So, Christine, people have a kind of very interesting view on working in studios. They say, "Oh, I hang out with the artists, I have a great time," and all of this. You worked, if I understood it correctly and read it correctly, 12 to 16 hours, 6 days a week in the studio.
Yeah, literally.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that work back then.
Well, that's what it was. It was work. And there were times when Pat had multiple projects going on, or I was working for multiple producers. Yes, I did a vast majority of Patrick's work, but he wasn't the only producer that I was working with or for at the time. I did the Revanche album. That was a lot of fun. And then I did quite a bit of work with August Darnell, who had Key Creole and the Coconuts. And then he had another project that was called Spooks in Space. So I got to do that with him. I did a lot of the Coconut stuff for him. Then we were still doing stuff. Bert Dicato was another one that we worked for. He did a lot of stuff for RCA. So, there were multiple things going on. And Patrick was usually juggling 2 or 3 projects at one time. So today we might go in and do, like we went in and did Lolita Holloway, but then tomorrow we went and did Benny King, and then we did Melba Moore. We did The Main Ingredients. We did Candy Staten, Inner Life. There was always something on. It's Rainbow Brown, which is one of my favorites. I love that song. That was one of my favorite projects. That's myself, Lucy Martin, and Yvonne Lewis doing that. Because I used to do, different girls for different things. I didn't just call the same people over and over and over again. I had a multiple amount of good singers that all wanted to work and all needed to work. So I spread it around. I didn't call this one every day. Everybody got a chance to make some money. Everybody got a chance. Norma Garber was another one of the combinations that I used. Norma Jean Wright was another one of the combinations. Jocelyn I used. Luther I used. I called all these people for different sessions. Different sessions created different sounds.
That's very impressive. You were one of the few women back then in a man's business who you helped producing. You have songwriting credits on many hit records. How were that at that time as a woman in that man's business to put yourself out there and do that? Because that's very rare.
I got to be honest with you. I was doing what I love to do. And I was having so much. It wasn't work to me. You understand? I went to a job that I enjoyed every day. That's not like you have to get up and go get on the train and go be a bank teller. Okay, there's a big difference. I didn't have to deal with people that I didn't want to have to deal with. You know what I mean? And everybody that I dealt with had a talent. You didn't have to like them as a person, but you liked their talent. You respected their talent. And one thing about the studio that everybody knows, you leave your shit outside the door and pick it up on the way out. When you come in now. It's about what we're doing. It's about the music. It's not about who likes who or who went there. That stuff never enters the studio. Everybody picks that shit up when they leave. So you went to work every day doing something that you love, doing it with people who did it well, and that can't make you feel anything but good. Some of the voices I got to work with, couldn't make you feel anything but good. So yeah, I didn't mind. Yeah, some days the days got long, but when you're in the middle of the work, it's only when you got like every now and then you'd get called for a song for somebody who couldn't sing their way out of a paper bag, and it's just they have a boyfriend or a husband or with money and they're going to make a record for their wife or their girlfriend, that kind of a thing. And so you have to diligently go there and do your job and politely leave before they start singing because you don't want to have to be there for that. But other than that, going to work was, you couldn't wait to get to work because you knew you were going to have a good day. Oh man, today we're doing the main ingredient. Especially because with Patrick, I got to hear a lot of those songs before they hit the studio because he'd be walking around the house humming the parts as he's writing it down. You know what I mean? And where the singers that come in, they're hearing it for the first time when they get to the studio. I've watched him live with it on a daily basis as he puts it together. So yeah, there's a real, I can't wait to get to, I want to do it. I hear this, I hear that. Can we do this party? So there's a excitement that you have, getting ready to go to do this project because you've watched it as it's developed, so I wouldn't say, 16 hours that's no big deal. That's no big deal. That was, sure, there were days we were tired. Some sessions were longer than others. But for the most part, nobody complained about, well, this session is taking so long. You know what I mean? No, we had too much fun. We enjoyed what we did. And we'd play it back and we'd going like, oh, girl, listen. This is the kind of enthusiasm that the singers I worked with had for themselves. They really loved what they did. They loved how we made it sound. And then we all left at the end of the day. Everybody left with a smile on their face. Everybody felt good. They felt good about how their day had gone and what they'd done. You cannot ask more than that from a job. Mm-hmm. At least in my eyes.
How was the change of music for you between the late 70s to the early 80s when disco changed to wave pop? How was that in your impression?
Well, that's hard to say because it didn't really mean much to me at the time. It didn't. First of all, I was younger, okay? I was still able to go out and sing my songs, okay, when I got hired. And then I had also moved down to Florida and I had entered the world of standards and jazz and, playing with live musicians in cafes, and supper clubs and that kind of thing. So now that was a whole different world for me. And so I didn't really miss anything that I thought because I was still singing. And as long as I'm singing and working, it didn't matter. And I really did not know at the time what was taking place in New York, because I think, let's see, Courtney's born in early 80s. I went down to Florida. She was young. She was about 8 months old, something like that. Yeah. I went down to Florida. I came back from Florida and went back to New York in the 90s. So and it was different down there. I mean, I was living in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, that kind of thing. There was so much work everywhere. And everything was open every night. And everything was open late. So I wasn't affected by what was going on I was still able to work the big discos, Backstreet, places like that I love that place. I was still able to work the Copa. They had two. They had one in Lauderdale and they had one in where's the very tip end of Florida. I worked both of those. So and there was other clubs. I can't think of the names right hand off the top of my head. I keep telling myself when I'm going to do an interview, I need to sit down and write down all kinds of things because I can't remember. I just off the top of my head, I can't remember. And then it'll come back. Yeah, that was the name of the. But and then there's so much stuff in my head. So much stuff in my head. So many years of God being on the road and Josh and I, when we talk now, when we get together, we still laugh about. Do you remember when such and such did so and so on such and such, and all the different things that happened to us on the road? I mean, I probably had all kinds of experiences from amplifiers blowing up to things catching on fire to clothing falling off. Yeah, fights breaking out and almost coming on the stage. I mean, I think I've seen it all.
That's great. I wish you would write a book.
Somebody keeps telling me that, but it was a good ride. I mean, it's been a good ride. And as far as I'm concerned, the ride's not over. I'm going to sing until I can't sing anymore. I'm going to sing until I drop because that's what I do.
Yeah, and you do it great. I've heard some footage on YouTube from your latest appearances, and you sound like back in the 80s. So
Thanks.
That's really great. That's really great. I enjoyed that very much.
You just caught me when I've got this cold. I've been fighting this chest cold last week, and it's this weather. This doesn't help. So this is why I sound so husky, my speaking voice.
It works great. In 1983, you had a hit with a remake of a song. I must admit, I prefer the original version from Freak, the first one. I like the old school strings and everything to it.
I do too. That'll always be my favorite.
Yes, that's just a great version. But this one became a smashing hit because, unfortunately, back in the day with the original version, it didn't come out as a single. I think it would have been a hit back then as well.
Patrick, that was such a wonderful album. It had so much great stuff on it. And Atlantic Records, and yes, I called you out, they did absolutely nothing. And I mean nothing to promote it. At all. At all. And I remember there's a club in Manhattan called the Paradise Garage, okay? And Larry Van and I became really good friends. But this song had been out, I don't know for how long, almost a year. I didn't get called for one gig. And that's the reason I stopped going out with Musique, because now I was going to concentrate on myself singly. And because I had done all the leads on the Musique stuff, what little bit that there is to do. And I thought this is what's going to happen now. And I didn't get called for one gig. I had one guy call me. I'm not going to call his name. He was working at Atlantic Records, and he said to me, the Paradise Garage would like you to sing Weekend. And I was like, okay, great. I said, how much does it pay? He said, it doesn't pay anything. It's promotional. And I was like, that's not going to happen. Okay, not doing that. All right. But I started going down to before I started going. But anyway, because I had never been there. And I had no idea the influence that the Paradise Garage had on the music world at that point. Okay. And when I was at Blank Tapes one day, I don't even remember who we were working on. I really don't. And Bob Blank was talking to me about Larry and something. And this man come up to me and said, are you Christine Wiltshire? I said, yeah. He said, you're the one who sings Weekend? I said, yeah. He says, I'm Michael. He says, I've been looking for you for almost a year, trying to get to you, to have you come to because Larry turned that in. That is like the anthem. That is like the anthem of the Paradise Garage. Okay. And he said, but I've been trying to find. I said, well, nobody told me. I said, I got one call from somebody telling me you wanted me to come and sing something promotional. He was like, what? What? See, this is what they also used to do. You'd have these little gophers who worked in different, you know what a gopher is, go for this, go for that worked in Atlanta in different record companies. And if they could get an artist to play at a club, they would tell the artist it was promotional and they would pocket the money.
Wow.
So he had me come there that night. He paid me well. And he had me there at least 4 times. They also brought me there with Musique. And they brought me there with Class Action. And then I used to sneak in there on the weekends. Not sneak, but that's the one place I went to 54 and I did work at 54 with Musique. And it was fun and it was but it's like, you gotta have on all your stuff, and my good shit ain't good for dancing in. Okay, it's not it's not the most comfortable things. It's not the most comfortable clothes to dance in. You will look fabulous, okay, but you will be uncomfortable. And so it was 54 was nice. It wasn't for me personally, my personal how I'd like to hang out. But I mean, I thought it was really cool to be there and be around all these people and see all of that. But when I went out to dance, I would put on jeans and a t-shirt and go to the garage and some sneakers. And you could just melt into the crowd. Nobody's looking for you, but Larry would find me every single time on that dance floor. And as soon as he'd spot me, even if he had just played the record 5 minutes ago, he would play it again. And those kids would go wild. And that is a great feeling. Because when you're on stage, yes, people are going to clap and they're going to be polite. But when you're in the crowd and they don't know you're there and they start hooping and whooping and jumping around to something you're singing, baby, there's no feeling like that in the world. Trust me when I tell you. Yeah, that was a highlight. That was a real highlight to experience that, But yeah, I love the garage and I loved Larry. And when he talked to me about redoing a remake of it, I had no problem with that because I trusted him. And we were going to do some other things, but unfortunately, Larry got sick, and that was.
Yeah, he died in the beginning of the 90s, I think. That was very, very tragic.
He died, and he was young.
Yeah, he was very young. He was, I think, in his mid to end 30s. He was very young.
He was like 38 or something. He was young, and so that was like, even when he got sick, I didn't think it was going to be, end of life sickness. It's why you got to be grateful for every day that you have, because you never know how long you have. But I tell you one thing about Larry, he played hard every single day. He played his music hard in every single way. He has no complaints with that because he did what he loved to do, and he was damn good at it. To me, he was still the best. He set the precedence.
Yeah. And many people learn from him. And we just had Record Store Day. Don't know if you know that the record stores are opening and they're putting out certain and special releases. And this year they had a double album from Larry Levan coming out.
Good.
So he's
because I've seen a few of my friends Happy Record Day. A couple of my DJ friends that are all putting up Happy Record Day on Facebook. But to me, it was just Sunday.
What was your favorite collaboration in life? Was it the one with Ghislaine Brown? Do you have a favorite one you worked with?
Oh my God, there's so many. One of my favorites, one of my very favorites is a song that I wrote for Bruni Pagan. And it was called You Refuse to See. And the backgrounds were myself, Luther Vandross, and Gwen Guthrie. They just made that, it just sounded like magic for me, especially since I had written it. You know what I mean? And they were singing just what I wanted sung and in the way I wanted it sung. That for me was magic. Um, Another of the backgrounds that I particularly love is Eddie Kendrick's. There's a song called I Just Want to Be the One in Your Life.
Mhm.
And that's Yvonne Lewis, myself, and Luther. And I wish they just weren't mixed down. So I wish they were just a little bit more forward in the mix. But though I was like in heaven when I came out of there. And there was a few others. We did some backgrounds. We did something else for the main ingredient on, and I would really like to redo this song. It's called Party People. It was a song that Luther wrote, and we did backgrounds on it. And yeah, they were rocking, and I liked them. I did. I mean, I got a lot of favorites, and so many. I can't remember the names of all the songs, but when I hear them, I never forget a melody.
Mm.
If I've sung on something, I may not remember all the words, but I will not forget the melody. I'll know it right away. You know, and so much stuff, man. Oh goodness, it's
Yeah,
so.
you have a huge catalog of things you did, and it's so sad. Every DJ around the world knows you and knows your name, but the people who are dancing to your tunes have no idea who you are, and that thing is a tragedy, I think.
Yeah, well, that's my fault too. And again, it's like when you ask me about, being writing and doing all these things and doing some production, and it was mostly men. And I veered off into something else. But what I also meant to say is I didn't know a damn thing about the business. I didn't know a thing about the business itself. I didn't know what went on behind closed doors. I didn't know what should be on paper. I didn't know what was at stake. I didn't know the types of money that could be made. You understand? I didn't know any of that. I was so happy doing what I was doing and getting paid for it and getting paid well. But I didn't know the business of music. Okay. And there lies the conflicts for all of us as singers when we started. We had to learn the hard way because the first song that I wrote for Prelude, I got no publishing off of that. I had to give my publishing up. I got writer's credit, but they took half of the publishing and Pat had the other half. So what is that? The woman, the men got that shit, but the chick is out in the dark. Okay. But I didn't know it. And I didn't realize how to play the game, and Patrick was just learning the game himself because now he was finally starting to deal with a major company, and major companies were calling. This is before, Sal Soul and RCA and all these people came along, he was putting out Atmosphere Strut on Pap Records. That was his own little label. Okay. Now you're dealing with the big boys, and the big boys, they wanted their share of the money. You see, and I'm not in the negotiations there. I don't know what contracts have been negotiated. He's trying to make whatever deal he makes, and I'm just being okay. I have a session I'm hired. I'm not part of that other stuff, but you learn without breaking each particular thing or situations down. A lot of shit happens in the business. I mean, I've even seen threats. Okay. He was actually threatened, and he did a song for somebody, and I did the backgrounds, and the singer who sings it, she's all on Facebook today, well-known singer, but the person who put up the money was just a short up gangster, scary motherfucker. That's exactly who he was back in those days. And and he actually made threats toward Patrick, and that's how that record came about. Now, if I
Wow.
ever write a book, I'll put his name in there. But until then, you know, because he's old now and he can't get to me now. But I damn sure was scared of him back then because he was a bona fide gangster. He really was. And so you had all these things, you know, you had taken into the consideration. You have people that come out of your past and think they should be part of your future because they knew you in the past or they grew up in your neighborhood, which was his mentality, you know. And people who threaten people like that are usually come from, it's usually somebody who was in your, how come you don't use me for this? Or, because you have no talent, you know, how come you know what I mean? This is, it's not about your friends. It's not about because we grew up on the same block, you know, and you had that mentality to deal with. But then you had the realistic business of a world that was controlled by all white men. And this was a door you hadn't been through yet. And this is a world that you did not know. Patrick had to learn those things. And yeah, he hit a lot of bumps in the road. And in some instances, he made some not so good choices. The bottom line is his music prevailed. And that's the most important thing, is that his music still prevails and it's still relevant. Still, people still respect it and they still listen to it. And that will never go away. His legacy is secured. But coming up, I mean, come on, I was like fresh out of the military. I was like 23 years old. You know, all I had known was Uncle Sam to that point. You understand? And I mean, I always knew I wanted to sing. I sang when I was in the military too. But it was a completely different world. And I was not prepared for it, how to do business in it. And I had to learn.
Wow. You mentioned some new projects coming up, a new single coming up. If people want to book you, how can they do that? And what projects are coming up?
Well, if people want to book me, which I would hope they do, they can contact me directly through my artist page, the Christine Wiltshire artist page. All the information is there. The email is there. They can easily get the phone number. I do have at different times people who handle particular gigs for me. So if you want to get in touch with me, I'll put you right in touch with them, and we can. That's not a problem. What was the other question you asked me?
The other question is, what upcoming projects do you have?
The upcoming projects.
New single coming up.
The upcoming projects. Well, I've got something in the can that I've been working on with a producer here. Right now he's undergoing. He had to have some surgery, so we're just waiting for him to, heal back up. So, but his name is Ed Burley, with a guy named Ed Burley and Richard Marinus, and they've been doing parties here for years. And I mean, they give the best parties in Amsterdam. And they used to do these parties 4 times a year, and it's old school stuff. And I think they're going by Disco Sparks now. But we've got something in the can already. The music is in the can, and like I said, Ed's had to have some surgery, and he's just gotten through that. So we're gonna pick that back up as soon as, And then my friend Leroy Burgess sent me a song the other day, right before his surgery. It's like everybody's having surgery. I just had surgery in December. I mean, yeah, it's the 3 surgeries. You know what I mean? But he sent me a song the other day that I have fallen, definitely in love with. As soon as he gets that track together for me, I'll definitely put my voice on it. And I think I will be coming to the States possibly in August. There is a celebration that they're trying to put together. I don't want to speak on it because it's not my place, but yeah, it looks like that might be happening, and it would be myself and some other singers that and Leroy, and that's looking really promising. So
great.
Yeah.
Do you have a final message for your fans?
Well, come out when I'm working someplace. you know, what do you tell people? Look, I am thankful for all the people that it's not even so much bought my records, because you bought the records, you didn't know who I was, or you bought the records, the record made you feel good, you danced to it, and that's the job that record was supposed to do. But I will say, I'd like to say thank you to my Facebook fans, because I'm not on Instagram and I'm not on TikTok and I'm not on Twitter. I have a hard enough time keeping up with Facebook, honey. Okay. And so many, and I've been hacked, and they put these fake Twitter accounts up and Instagram accounts, and they're asking people for money. And so I just left that alone. Maybe one of these days I'll get back to Instagram. But right now, but I get a lot of feedback on Facebook. It's like the other day, I've been fighting with the IND here for 3 years, waiting to get my residency card. And I mean, I had one, but make a long story short, I had to go to court, the whole bit. I've been fighting with them, and I finally got my card, and I put it on Facebook, and I was saying thank you to all the people, my friends and supporters, who, because let me tell you, when you don't know if you can stay in a country, that turns a lot of things around. Okay, it takes a lot of things away from you, and it makes it impossible for you to do a lot of things, and it just makes your life hard. And I got about over 300 congratulations. People were just glad to see that I had gotten this card. So, and that's a nice feeling. That's a really nice feeling. So
I do hope you stay a little. You are now living in Amsterdam, which or the Netherlands, which I think is great, because we don't have the time difference, and I don't need to wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to make this interview. So, Christine, thank you so much for doing this interview, for the time and the great stories, and telling.
And if you're free in June, you should come to the Disco Diva Festival. I'll be there with Lucy Martin and Norma Jean Wright.
It's in Italy, right?
Yes.
Yes. If one is in the Netherlands, I will come up surely.
Okay. Well, we'll have to get one in the Netherlands.
Yes, I hope so.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. You take good care, Nadine.
Bye.
Bye-bye.